Diana Owens was a successful woman, one of New York's most successful entrepreneurs. At 42, she had everything: a luxury mansion, an empire of cosmetics that surpassed borders, and a seemingly perfect life. But his smile was always shy, and his distant gaze as if he carried a weight impossible to forget. Diana was actually a broken woman. 3 years ago, she had lost her only child, Ethan, in a tragic accident. The 16-year-old was hit by a drunk driver, and his life was interrupted even before he could start. Since that day, Diana has been locked in her luxury world, trying to fill the void with material goods and activities that did not connect it with reality. She avoided any mention of Ethan's name, but inside he never left his mind. Her husband James tried to be the support she needed, but he was also swallowed by mourning, and their marriage began to live in a constant emotional wear and tear. Diana, feeling guilty for not being able to protect her son, plunged into her work, moving away from everything that reminded her of the past. An ordinary winter afternoon, Diana was coming home after an important meeting. She was distracted, watching Manhattan's cold street through the car window when something stopped the vehicle abruptly. On the sidewalk, near a bus stop, a boy of about 12 years, thin and torn clothes, was asking for money from the passers-by. But what caught the most attention of Diana was that the boy had only one arm. The boy's young age and fragile look made her stop unexpectedly. She tried to look away, but something inside her made her get out of the car and walk to him. The boy raised his eyes as he approached, and his expression was surprised, as if he didn't expect help. She stood for a moment watching her face, something that made her swallow hard. What most shocked her was the inexplicable resemblance between the boy and his late son Ethan. The same face shape, brown eyes, and distant expression. Diana felt a wave of emotions that made her almost faint. It was impossible not to realize the similarity. Diana slowly bent down, trying to control her emotions, and asked with her embargoed voice, Are you okay?" The boy just looked at her without responding right away. The tension was palpable, but something in that look made Diana feel even more connected to him. She reached out, offering him a sum of money, but the boy refused with a soft gesture, as if that was not what he wanted. I don't need money," he said with a hoarse and hesitant voice. "I just need help." Diana didn't know what to say. She couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. The boy's face looked like a reflection of the past, a vision that caught her off guard. The pain of mourning, which she thought to have surpassed, came back with all her strength. She took a deep breath, trying to keep control. "What are you called?" she asked, already fearing what she could hear. "Max," the boy answered. "Max Miller." Diana felt a knot in her throat. Her mind was divided between fear and hope. What was she doing there? Why did that boy make her feel so much the presence of Ethan? She knew there was something more there, something she needed to find out. Before he could say anything else, he interrupted her. Do you have something to offer me? I'm not good to ask, but my father always told me that we should ask when we really need something." The silence between them was heavy, but Diana knew that this meeting was not a mere chance. She did not believe in coincidences. She felt that this boy had a story, and she needed to know her, even if it was to alleviate her own pain. She put her hand on Max's shoulder and said, "Let's talk." Max did not protest. He seemed to give in, as if something inside him was waiting for that chance. Diana took him to a coffee nearby where they were able to sit at a quiet table, away from the noise of the street. The boy seemed uncomfortable, but accepted the hot tea she offered her. As he warmed, Diana watched him closely. Something in her countenance, in her way of looking at the world around, made her the impression that he was always on the run, as if carrying a much larger weight than his age indicated. She then asked, trying not to sound desperate, "Max, where did you come from? What happened to you?" Max looked at her with an empty look and said, "My mother died when I was little. I went to live with my father, but he was not a good person. I didn't treat me well. I was getting more and more alone. But sometimes people can no longer be alone, right?" Diana felt an inexplicable pain to hear her words. It was as if the boy was talking not only about himself, but also about her. He was a younger version of Ethan, but also brought the same pain of loss, abandonment, something that connected it deeply. Max then silent, and it was Diana who, for the first time, shared some of her own pain. She didn't know how, but she needed to tell. "I lost my son, Max, 3 years ago. A car accident. She stopped, swallowing the words. It was hard, very difficult to talk about it, but he needed to, because he felt he could understand, as if he were the key to relieving his mourning. She didn't know why, but she felt that he had something to do with Ethan. The boy looked at her with a penetrating look, as if noticing the depth of his pain, but instead of a simple comfort, he said something that made her even more perplexed. "Do you think everything that happened was an accident?" "I don't know. I don't know what happened. I was there and now I'm here. I don't know how, but I'm here. Maybe everything has a reason, right?" Max's gaze was mysterious, and something in his words made her question everything. Perhaps he was more than just a lost boy on the street. Perhaps he was an answer, something she still didn't completely understand. Diana was silent, absorbing Max's words, feeling a mix of anger, confusion, and hope. She knew what he said could be a metaphor for something deeper, but could not understand what. The connection between the two intensified every second, as if they were connected by something invisible that only time could reveal. After the coffee meeting, Diana felt a growing curiosity about Max. She watched him, trying to find some rational explanation for the connection so strong she felt with him. The boy looked more than a mere street child. He had something in his eyes, something deep that made her believe that he had answers to the questions she never dared to ask. Max, in turn, seemed reluctant to share his life. He was closer, watching the environment around with a vigilance that Diana had never seen in such a young child. His suspicious behavior reflected the trauma he carried. He never seemed comfortable, even in a safe environment like coffee. "So, Max," Diana started, trying to break the ice. "What do you do to survive? How do you hold?" Max hesitated for a moment but responded with impressive calm to someone so young. I do what I can. Some people give me money, others help me with food. There is a shelter where I sleep sometimes. I'm not good to ask, but that's how life is." Diana felt a wave of compassion. The boy had lived a life full of difficulties and suffering, something she knew very well. Although her difficulties had a different look, she couldn't completely understand the reason he was alone on the streets. But the connection between them seemed to deepen with every word he said. The conversation deviated for a few minutes until Diana found himself asking something that had no intention of questioning. "Max, do you have family? Someone beyond your father?" He looked at her, an empty look as if remembering something very painful. Max sighed with a slight sadness on his face and replied, "My father. He was not very present. Sometimes he left me alone at home and went out for days. When he was there, he didn't treat me well. I didn't want to be there. So one day, I left." Diana was silent. She knew there was more in her history than Max was willing to tell. But I also knew that, like her, he carried a pain that could not be erased. She didn't know how, but she felt she was about to discover something even deeper. She realized that as he spoke, something in his mind began to adjust, as if a puzzle were starting to make sense. She felt a connection to Max, but also a disturbing feeling, as if it were a figure of the past who had returned in some way. At the same time, Diana remembered what life was like with Ethan. "Your son has always been a cheerful boy, full of life, dreams, and energy. He was never afraid to follow his own ways, even when he felt lost." Diana didn't know why, but Max, with her silent and mysterious way, reminded her so much of Ethan. She took a piece of paper and wrote her phone number, placing it in one of Max's hands. "If you need something, anything, you can call me. I don't know what's going on, but I think we have something in common. I want to help you." Max looked at her without saying a word, but her eyes shone for a brief moment. He took the paper, keeping it in his pocket carefully. For some reason, that gesture seemed a sign that something big was about to happen. Something she still didn't understand completely, but that fate was leading her. Diana didn't know what the future reserved, but she felt that she was about to discover something that could change her life forever. While Max got up to leave, she watched him leave, and something inside her said that this would not be their last date. She took the bag and before leaving looked again through the coffee window. The boy's view, small and alone, disappearing on New York's busy streets, made her think of Ethan. The pain of the loss was still there, as real as the air she breathed, but a seed of hope, something not yet visible, began to sprout inside her. Max, with his distant and enigmatic gaze, was more than just a child without a home. He was undoubtedly connected to her in a way she didn't understand yet, and in the meantime she consumed her. She wondered if Max was somehow there to fulfill a role that fate had reserved. The following days were a mixture of distraction and obsession to Diana. She couldn't get Max out of her mind. The boy's face, so similar to Ethan's, seemed to pursue it every moment of his day. Her presence, so intense and mysterious, made Diana question everything she thought to know about life. She knew she should focus on work, that she should go back to her routine, but what happened at coffee didn't get out of her head. Max had not contacted. No connection, no message. Diana was lost, as if he had taken a step forward, but then completely backwards. She was trying to be rational, saying to herself that there was no reason to expect him to look for her. He had his own life, a difficult life, and probably wouldn't even remember his number. But even so, something inside her continued to insist that there was something more in this meeting. That morning, she decided she could no longer wait. Diana needed to do something. She knew Max was vulnerable and couldn't ignore it. Then she started looking for him. He had no idea where he lived or how to find him, but his instinct guided her to the streets he had mentioned. She began to go through the points where the beggars and homeless people used to gather, her hopes decreasing around every corner. She spent hours looking for, until finally, when the sun was starting to put herself, she saw him. Max was standing in a dark corner of a busy street looking at nothing, as if waiting for something. Diana called him, but he didn't see her right away. She called him louder, almost begging him that he noted it. When his eyes finally met, Max stepped back, as if he feared being recognized. "Max," Diana said, her trembling voice. "Hi, Max, it's me, Diana." He hesitated, his tense expression, and then approached with quick steps. "What are you doing here?" he asked, with a colder tone than she expected. I wanted to talk to you. I have worried about you," Diana answered, trying to stay calm, although her anxiety was stamped on her face. Max looked around, seemingly uncomfortable. He was moving away once more as if he didn't want to be found, but something in his gaze was changing. He finally sighed, seemed to be fighting some kind of internal impulse. I'm not the person you think I am. No, I don't want you to get involved with me anymore." Diana was surprised. She didn't expect that answer, but before he could ask more, Max looked around and said with a softer tone, I'm not what you think." Those words echoed in Diana's mind. What did he mean by that? Was he talking about himself or something bigger? Max was hiding something much deeper, something Diana couldn't understand yet, but she felt about her own pain. Something was very wrong there, and she knew she needed to find out what it was. "Max, please," she begged, approaching a little more but without invading his space. "I just want to help you. If you can tell me what happened, maybe I can do something." Max stared at her for a few seconds, and she saw in her eyes a mixture of fear and sadness. It was as if he was trying to get rid of something much bigger than him, something that imprisoned him. He stepped back, shaking his head. "You don't understand. I'm not the boy you think. I am someone else. I'm someone else, and you can't save me from it." Those words, said with such certainty and pain, hit Diana as a punch in the stomach. She didn't know what he was saying, but she felt that it had to do with her own son, with the tragedy that had marked her life forever. Max was referring to something bigger, something that surpassed the simple pain of a lost boy. It was as if he was trying to get rid of such a great weight that his soul was broken. Diana needed to understand what that meant. She didn't know if she should insist, but something inside her said she couldn't let Max escape again. She knew he was in danger, and more than that, he seemed to be a key to solving the issues of his own life. "Max, please explain to me. I don't want to force you at all, but give me a chance to understand what is happening to you," Diana asked, her voice embargoed by emotion. Max looked at her with eyes loaded with a deep mystery, and finally, after a long silence, he said, I'm not just a street boy. I was the son of someone important. I went someone else in another life, and I don't know how, but now I'm here. I don't know what happened." Diana was perplexed. Those words made no sense, but something in it said that Max knew more than he was revealing. She felt her body shudder in a way she couldn't control. She knew Max was talking about something that transcended any logic, something that challenged her understanding. But what? What did he mean by those enigmatic words? And most importantly, what did all this have to do with Ethan? Before he could formulate more questions, Max walked away, his expression now completely closed. He turned his back, and Diana could no longer reach him. As he saw him disappear in the crowd, Diana felt a growing anger, mixed with a sense of helplessness. Something was happening to Max. something she didn't understand, but she knew she was linked to her son in an inexplicable way, and she wouldn't rest until she discovered the truth. The days following that disconcerting meeting were a whirlwind to Diana. She couldn't stop thinking about Max, and more importantly, the words he had told her. "I'm not just a street boy. I was someone else in another life." The weight of these words plagued her. It was as if Max were a key to something much larger and deeper than she could understand. Diana knew the solution was not in expecting Max to come back. Something inside her, something that connected his pain to Max's, said he was in a much larger internal fight than any child could bear alone. Each day she felt that she was getting closer to understanding what was going on. Something inexplicable was at stake, and she was determined to unravel it. Diana began researching more about street children in New York, and for the following weeks, she became involved with organizations to support these young people. His goal was not just to help, but to understand Max's behavior and what he was trying to hide. She talked to volunteers, visited shelters, and met other children in a similar situation. But nothing seemed clearly connecting with Max's story. It made nothing sense except the growing feeling that there was something supernatural behind what he said. On a rainy night, while Diana returned home from one of these visits to a shelter, something stopped her in front of a small alley, where a hooded figure was standing, with a dark and enigmatic look. The figure was unmistakable. It was Max. He was in a dark corner far from all, and when he saw Diana, his eyes brightened himself briefly, as if he knew she was looking for him. The tension was in the air. Diana, without hesitation, approached him. "Max," she started, her heart shot. "What is happening? What do you mean with someone else? Are you in danger?" Max did not respond immediately. He seemed to fight with something inside him. When finally he said, his voice was low, almost imperceptible, You won't understand, but I'm not the boy from before. I'm not Max Miller you met." Diana felt a strange feeling of déjà vu, as if his words were echoing inside her own mind. She knew he was referring to something else, something that transcended the circumstances of the life of a lost boy. Max looked around with restless eyes. He was looking at both sides of the street, as if waiting for something, or someone. When he saw that no one was in sight, he stepped closer to Diana. I can't stay here anymore. They are coming. You don't understand, Diana. You will never understand until it happens. They are behind me. They know what I did. They know what I am." Max's words were loaded with dread. Diana didn't know what he was trying to say, but his whole body reacted with a protective boost. Something was very wrong, and she felt she couldn't leave that boy alone. Not now. "Who's behind you, Max?" asked Diana, with a force she barely recognized in herself. "What do you mean with what you did?" Max looked at her for a moment, and the intensity of her gaze made Diana feel like a wave of energy is passing between them. He seemed to mean more, but the words didn't come out. Suddenly he stepped back, his eyes widened with a mixture of fear and understanding. "They are coming. I have to go. Sorry, Diana. I can't stay." Not saying anything else, he turned and disappeared into the darkness of the alley, so quickly that Diana had no time to react. The sense of urgency took over her, but she stayed there, still, not knowing what to do. What did he mean by them? Who was them? And what did Max knew she didn't know? In the following days, Diana sought Max without rest, visiting the places where he used to appear, but he was no longer in any of them. The city seemed to have swallowed the boy. Diana felt a growing sense of despair. Something was approaching, something she couldn't control. Increasingly, she felt that Max had crucial information, something that could change everything, not just his life, but yours too. She was on the brink of emotional collapse. Max was not just a street boy. He had a secret, and she needed to find out what this secret was, before it was too late. It was then that one night, while in his office reviewing some documents, Diana received an unexpected call. The number that appeared on the screen was not familiar, but something inside it made her answer. "Diana, it's me, Max." Max's hoarse and hasty voice sounded across the line. "You're right about everything. They are coming, but I am not what you think. I'm not Max Miller anymore. I'm someone else, someone you met before. And if you don't understand what happened, you'll lose everything." The connection was cut abruptly, leaving Diana astonished. She was paralyzed, not knowing what that meant. What did Max mean, someone you met before? She felt she was on the verge of a revelation that would change her life forever. But the key piece was still missing to fit everything. Diana couldn't recover from Max's abrupt connection. His words were recorded in her mind, and she felt that everything she knew was about to be turned upside down. He had said, "I'm someone else. Someone you met before." What did he mean by that? She was starting to lose control, but at the same time she couldn't ignore the feeling that she was very close to something important, something that could finally bring answers about the connection between her and Max. In the following days, Diana tried to investigate any possible connection between Max's past and her own son, Ethan. She plunged into the memories of her life before tragedy and conversations with Ethan about friends and acquaintances. But nothing, absolutely nothing, seemed to fit in. Max seemed to be a ghost of the past, someone who appeared without warning, bringing with him an impossible riddle. It was one night when Diana was at home, sitting alone in her living room, that something happened. She was distracted, moving in old papers when the phone rang again. This time, the number that appeared on the screen was unknown, but the sensation inside it said it was Max. "Diana, I need you to listen to me." Max's voice was more tense than before, and Diana could feel the urgency in every word. They know from you. They are watching everything, and you are in danger. I was you." Those words, said with such clarity and confusion, left Diana without breath. I was you? How was this possible? What was Max trying to say? She tried to process the information but could not form a line of reasoning. She was getting desperate. "Max, what do you mean by that? You can't be my son." Diana was almost screaming, your mind being invaded by conflicting images and feelings. She was trying to understand, but the pieces didn't fit. "I know it looks crazy. I know it's hard to believe. But Diana, the truth is stranger than you think. I was Ethan. I was your son. Before I died, I did something that changed everything. Now I'm here, but I'm no longer who you think I'm." Diana was silent, the shock immobilizing her. Max's words, now clearer, were causing her to reconsider everything she thought to know about Ethan's death. "Max, your son? How is this possible?" She felt a mixture of unbelief and pain. The idea that this could be real seemed like a nightmare she couldn't wake up. "Max, or Ethan, if it's you." Diana tried to control your breath, your words coming out. "How is it possible? What are you saying? How did you come back?" Max, on the other side of the line, breathed heavily. "I don't know. I don't know if it's a second chance or a curse, but I'm back in some way. I was stuck somewhere, and now I'm here. But what I did to go back, this is not something you will understand now. Just know that you have to leave where you are. You are being observed." Before she could ask more, the line was cut again. Diana got the phone in hand, astonished, not knowing if she was dreaming or if that was real. The call ended abruptly, but she knew that something much deeper was happening. Max wasn't just a street boy. He wasn't just a lost child. He was connecting his past and gift in a way she couldn't understand, but she felt with every fiber of her being. The idea that Ethan, his son, was back, but in another way, was scary and fascinating at the same time. But there was also fear. If that were true, if Max were really Ethan, then what had he done to go back? And what did that mean to her? Fear began to infiltrate his heart. The feeling that it was being observed intensified. Diana began to look at every corner of her house, waiting for something or someone that she couldn't see. She didn't know if she should look for Max again or should wait for more signs. But whatever was happening was approaching, and she knew that the next step that could be the last one. The next day, Diana decided to take action. She could no longer stand still, hoping something would happen. She would go after Max, no matter where he was. She knew he had the answers. She had to understand the truth and, most importantly, needed to save Max, or Ethan if it were him, before it was too late. While preparing to leave, the doorbell rang. When she opened the door, a brown envelope was left in the threshold. Inside, there was only one picture, a picture of Ethan, about 5 years old, smiling at the camera in a park. But what most shocked her was what was written on the back of the photo. "I'm you, Mother. I'll be back." Diana felt the blood cool. She now knew that the story was about to take a course that would forever change her understanding of life and death. The envelope with Ethan's photo was a brutal blow to Diana. She held him with trembling hands, the fixed look in the words written on the back of the image. "I'm you, Mom, I'll be back." How was this possible? Like Max, or whoever he was, did you know about the photo? Did you know about her past so intimately? The questions multiplied in her mind at a frightening, but the most terrifying speed of all was what she knew would come next. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to regain the composure, but the images of her son, how he was always cheerful and full of life, began to invade his mind. Ethan. He would never have written something like that. If that was his message, then the implications were so great that she could barely understand. The photo looked like a macabre reminder of everything she had lost. Little Ethan smiling at the camera. Such an innocent smile, so distant from that reality she was now. She knew with increasingly disconcerting certainty that Max was not just a lost boy. He was more, much more. But what did he want with her? What did this connection mean, this apparent reincarnation of your child? And what exactly did he know about what happened to Ethan? Without wasting time, Diana took her coat and ran to the street, determined to go after Max. She could no longer wait for answers that would never come alone. She needed explanations, needed to understand what was happening. And now, more than ever, she knew time was running out. New York City seemed strangely distant as she walked the streets with a weight in her chest. His mind was 1,000, trying to make sense of everything that was happening. Every step she took seemed to lead to a new level of confusion, but at the same time a sense of increasing urgency. She felt that Max was somewhere nearby waiting for her, and she couldn't fail. The only thing she knew for sure was that he had the answers. She just needed to find him. When it finally reached the point where the last time it turns Max, the place was empty. There was no sign of him. She looked around, her heart hitting rapidly, and then approached one of the vagabonds who used to go to that area. She knew them now, had been familiar with the faces of homeless people, but no one seemed to know where Max was. Frustrated, Diana was about to leave when something caught her eye. A well-known figure appeared at a distance with the hood raised, the silhouette covered by the darkness. She could clearly see the boy's hair, the curved shoulders of those who were trying to hide. It was Max. She approached quickly, with a feeling of despair pulsating in her veins. When he came close enough, he noticed it, and his eyes widened with a mixture of surprise and fear. "What are you doing here?" Max asked, his voice almost a whisper. Diana didn't hesitate. She advanced, facing him without fear. "You have to explain to me, Max. I know what's going on, and I'm not leaving until you tell me the truth. You're my son, aren't you?" Max turned away sharply, as if Diana's words had hit him much stronger than he was prepared to endure. "No, you don't understand," he shouted, his face in pain. "This is not how things work. I'm not Ethan you met. I'm someone else now. I'm a version of it, but I'm not him. I am a second chance that went wrong." Max's words were mixed with the emotional chaos he carried, and Diana felt a deep pain when she saw the anguish in her eyes. He was fighting something much bigger than both, something she couldn't understand yet. "What do you mean by that?" Diana asked, her voice now full of despair. She stepped ahead, trying to touch him, but Max took another step backwards. "I did something wrong, Diana. Something you shouldn't have done. I was trying to go back, but now there is no return. There is no way to fix it anymore." Diana was silent, absorbing her words, trying to understand what he was saying. What had he done? What did this confusion of past and present meant? Was he trying to say he was an Ethan version, but a version that was lost somewhere between life and death? She didn't know, but fear in her heart prevented her from questioning him more deeply. Before she could continue, a distance noise made Max look back with wide eyes. He turned to Diana, his eyes reflecting the deepest fear. "They are coming," he whispered, his voice low and urgently. "They know where I am. They know from us. You need to leave now." Diana felt a wave of panic invade her body, but had no time to react. Before she could ask more, Max turned quickly and ran to the darkness, disappearing without traces. She stood there, paralyzed, the fear hitting hard on her chest. What did Max mean by them? Who was behind him? And what did that mean to her? Diana knew that something much bigger than she imagined was about to happen, but she didn't know if she was prepared to face the consequences of everything that was about to be revealed. Max's disappearance was a blow Diana didn't expect. The sense of impotence was like a huge wave, taking over your body and mind. She tried to look for him for more days, searching every corner of the city where he could be, but everything seemed in vain. Max had disappeared without a trace. and Diana had no idea what more could do. She found herself lost, immersed in the pain of not knowing, but it was also at this moment of anguish that something inside her began to change. The shock and fear began to give way to determination. Diana could no longer be on the sidelines of history, could no longer expect answers that would never come easy. She knew Max or Ethan or whoever he was at the center of something much bigger, something she needed to understand. More than ever, she needed to be strong. It was a cold morning when Diana woke up with a strange feeling of urgency. The phone rang while she was still a little sleepy. When she answered, the voice of James, her husband, came through the line. "Diana, I know you're going through something very difficult, but you need to start taking care of yourself, or you'll get lost in this maze. We cannot continue like this." Those words, which used to be a source of support, now they sounded empty. She didn't want to get lost anymore. I no longer wanted to be a shadow of the woman who was before the loss of Ethan. She was no longer willing to live with fear and doubt. She knew she needed to act. Diana spent the rest of the day planning something bold, something she had avoided so far, to investigate more deeply what Max had said about his return, what he had done to get there, and the them who were behind him. Something inside her said the answer was closer than she imagined, and that she had to unravel the mystery on her own. Decided, Diana started looking for clues, documents, anything that linked the events of the past to what was happening now. During this search and reflection journey, she began to realize that her journey was not just about finding answers about Max, but also of facing her own repressed emotions. She was no longer the fragile woman who had lost a son. She was someone who had the power to change the course of the story. Over the following days, Diana visited places that had been important to Ethan and her. She went to the park where he used to play, the school where he studied, and even the memorial he had built for him after his death. Everything seemed wrapped in a layer of fog and sadness, but as it spent more time in these places, Diana began to realize that the pain was changing. She was no longer just running away from the mourning, but she was confronting him head-on. She was finally ready to accept the loss and move on, but in a way she had never imagined. And it was in the park where Ethan used to play that she had the first big epiphany. As he walked along the trail he loved so much, Diana came across an elderly man sitting on a bench, watching the landscape with a thoughtful look. She recognized him immediately. He was the park gardener, someone who was always there taking care of the plants, working as part of that place. She approached him, and unknowingly why she asked her, "Do you remember a boy named Ethan? He used to come here, play in the park. Did you see it?" The gardener looked at her for a moment, with an expression of sadness on his face. Then with a soft voice, he replied, "Of course I remember, ma'am. He used to come here every day, but not only him. There was something special in that child. He told me once about something he wanted to do. He wanted to go back, wanted to correct something. He told me it would be possible, but if that happened, he would have to pay a price." Those words moved Diana deeply. She felt her heart beat hard on her chest. Back. What did that mean? Was the gardener referring to Ethan's desire to return to life? She felt like she was finally touching the tip of a wire that turned on everything that had happened. Maybe Max was, in fact, Ethan, or maybe a version of it. But what did he mean by paying a price? The gardener continued, not knowing that he had just shed a light on a mystery that extended for years. The boy talked a lot about what would come after death, about a cycle that no one could break. He had an idea that even scared me. He said that if he came back, it would be another way, perhaps to correct something that could not be done in that life. Diana felt the world turn around him. The gardener's words made more sense than anything she had ever heard. Max, or Ethan, had tried something to go back. Maybe it wasn't a reincarnation, but something more, something that challenged logic. But if it were true, if he really had done something to come back, what would this price be? And what was Diana's role in all this? She knew the answer was within her reach. It would no longer be a simple case of mourning or loss. It was the key to understanding what happened to Ethan and how she could help him find peace and perhaps even herself. Diana was more determined than ever. The revelation that Ethan, or Max, as he presented himself now, had tried something to return to life, had cast a new light on the situation. The gardener's words were hammering his mind. He wanted to correct something that could not be done in that life. What did that mean? What Ethan or Max was trying to correct, and what was the price he had paid? She knew that the answers were somewhere between the past and the present, and that the truth about what had happened to her son was about to reveal herself. Diana began to deepen further in the research. She revisited all the documents, the files of Ethan, the memories. In one of the drawers, she found an old notebook of Ethan, which he used to record his ideas and thoughts. She had forgotten him completely, but when he opened it, he saw that he was full of drawings, dreams, and stories he had created in childhood. It was clear that he had a fertile imagination, but one of the drawings caught his attention immediately. It was a representation of a door, with mysterious symbols designed around it, accompanied by words Diana recognized immediately. Back, cycle, price. She felt a chain of shock walking through her body. The words were connecting, finally making sense. Ethan had made a kind of pact with something or someone. He had sought a way to return, but what did he do exactly? Diana didn't know, but she felt that the notebook kept the key to the answer. Something was happening to Max, something that had roots in a deep and dark desire to correct something from his past life. She decided to go to the places mentioned by Ethan in the notebook: the school where he had studied, the old library he loved to attend, and finally the park where he used to play. All of these places were somehow connected to Ethan's desire to return and correct a mistake. But what was this mistake? When she arrived at the library, the same sense of discomfort and presumption invaded her. The shelves of books seemed now more dark, as if hiding something. Diana drove directly to the occult section, something she had never explored before. She knew that the theme was not part of Ethan's searches in adolescence, but somehow she felt that he could have found something there. A way to deal with the loss, perhaps, or even something much more dangerous. She ran her hands through the dusty books until a volume caught her attention. It was an ancient black cover book with esoteric symbols recorded on the cover. Diana took him and flipped him until she found a specific section on return rituals. The words were dense and difficult to understand, but what impressed her most was the instructions that seemed to describe exactly what Ethan, or Max, had tried to do. The book talked about rituals to bring the soul back, but also warned about the dangers involved, the price that should be paid. This price, the book said, was the loss of something very precious, something that once given could not be recovered. Diana felt her stomach wrap. It was clear now. Max, or rather Ethan, had tried to do the impossible. He had done what he shouldn't do. He tried to go back, but in doing so, something very dark had happened. He was stuck between the two worlds, not completely alive, but not completely dead. And now, he was trying to find a way to correct the mistake, to complete something that was still incomplete. But the question was, what did he need to correct? And why had he sought Diana? The answer was approaching, but she still didn't know what the consequence of it would be. What was Max Ethan more willing to lose? And what did he want from her? How could she help him without destroying her own life in the process? That's when Diana received a message on her cell phone. It was a simple text message. "You're closer than you think. Come to where it all started. I'll be waiting." The message was from Max, or who he was now. Diana knew this was the moment, the point without return. She couldn't go back anymore. She needed to go to where he was and confront him. It was the last chance to understand what was going on, and perhaps the last chance to save Max, or Ethan, or whatever the entity he had become. With a rapid heart and mind full of questions, Diana prepared for the final confrontation. She knew that when she arrived at Max's indicated place, everything could change. She was about to face something much bigger than she never imagined. Diana felt the weight of the decision that was about to make. Max's message guided her to a distant place on the edge of an old cemetery, where the twisted trees seemed to whisper forgotten secrets. The night was closed, and the full moon shone in the sky, illuminating the scenery almost supernaturally. The air was heavy, and the silence that surrounded her seemed to weigh more with every step she took. She was about to face what could be the greatest mystery of her life, something that disconcerted her deeply, but she felt she needed to understand. She looked around, looking for some sign of Max. The place seemed desolate, forgotten by time, but something inside it said it was there, in that dark place, that she would find the truth. With every step she took, the gardener's words echoed in her mind. He wanted to go back to correct something that could not be done in that life. What did he want to correct? What had he done? And why did all this take her there? Suddenly she heard a noise behind her. When he turned, he saw a hooded figure leaving the shadows. Diana's heart fired, but as she stared at the figure, she immediately recognized her face. It was Max, or at least his version she knew now. But something was different. He no longer looked like the shy boy she had first found. He looked more cold, farther. "Max," Diana whispered, her heart beating hard. "What happened to you? What is happening here?" He looked at her with an enigmatic smile, as if about to reveal something she didn't want to hear. His gaze was empty, but there was also something familiar in that smile. "You finally arrived, Diana," he said, his soft voice but loaded with a sinister tone. "You're closer than you think, but the truth is not what you expect." He stepped toward her, and Diana felt a feeling of cold through her body. She didn't know what he meant, but she felt the answer was close. The questions, the fears, everything seemed to condense at this only moment. "What did you do, Max? Or rather, what did you do, Ethan?" Diana asked, her son's name coming out with a deep pain in his voice. Max, or Ethan, as she now saw him, looked at her with a dark expression. He sighed, almost with an expression of regret, and said, "I did what many would do. I tried to bring back what I lost, what I should never have gone. I paid the price. I didn't know I would have to do that, but there was no choice. I wanted to correct a mistake, but in doing so I got lost. And now I'm just a shadow of who I was." Diana felt a knot in her throat. She was facing a being who was neither completely human nor completely spirit. He was stuck in a limbo, an existence between life and death, trying to correct something she still did not fully understand. "What do you need me?" she asked, her teary eyes. "What do you want me to do?" Max shook his head, his expression getting dark. "I don't know what else to do. I tried everything, Diana. I tried to go back and correct what happened, but I'm not who I was. I just wanted you to know that I didn't leave. I never wanted to leave you, Mom. But now there's no way back." Diana's heart squeezed with her words. The pain he was carrying, the pain he had tried to bury inside him, was evident. He was no longer the Ethan from before. He had lost himself, and what was left was just a reflection of the son she had known. The truth was even more painful than she imagined. She couldn't bring him back, not the way she wanted. She stepped toward him, her fixed eyes on Max. "Ethan, I love you, Ethan. I love you, but you can't go back. Not like that. You cannot carry this burden longer." Max looked at her, her eyes full of pain and regret. He was fighting the truth, trying to find a way to return, but Diana knew there was no way to reverse what had been done. I don't know who I am anymore. I made a terrible mistake. I just wanted to bring you back," Max said, his voice breaking. "I thought that would give me peace. I thought that doing this would correct what I lost." Diana reached for him, touching his face softly. She felt indescribable pain, but also immense compassion. She knew what she needed to do. "You are not lost, Ethan. You need to move on. Me too. And we will find peace, but not so. Not in that form." With these words, Diana felt that something inside her broke and rebuilt. She no longer needed answers. She no longer needed to bring back the impossible. What she needed was to let go. Ethan, or Max, or whatever he was now, needed an end, a rest. She would help him find it. But the truth was that perhaps the only way he finds peace was to put aside the need to correct what could not be corrected. Ethan looked at her last time, and then something inexplicable happened. His form began to dispose of the shadows, as if his own essence was dissolving, returning to what he really was, a soul that needed to move on. Diana fell to her knees, her eyes full of tears. She knew she had just lost again, but at the same time she felt a lightness in her heart. She had released her son she could never have back, but also let him go. Diana was on her knees on the floor, the darkness around her seeming to swallow everything. The wind howled between the trees, but deep down she felt a growing calm inside her. Max, or Ethan, or whatever the being she had found there, had finally left. She didn't know exactly how, but she knew she had fulfilled her mission, that she had released that lost soul. She looked at the sky, feeling the tears mingle with the rain that was beginning to fall. The pain she carried for years by the loss of Ethan did not disappear instantly, but something had changed. The fault that had consumed her for so long, the feeling that she would never be able to redeem herself, had diminished. She now knew that not everything was under her control. Sometimes someone's fate needed to be accepted, and with that she found a kind of peace. She got up slowly, her body still shaking with the intensity of the moment. Max Ethan's words echoed in his mind. "I just wanted to bring you back." Diana knew he didn't want to hurt her. He just wanted to correct something that could not be corrected. And in a way, she also needed to understand that. She had to accept the fact that life followed her course, even in inexplicable and painful ways. She began walking back along the winding path, feeling lighter, but at the same time lonely. The place where she had found Max was now quiet, empty. The shadow he carried was disappeared, leaving behind only a sense of end. She knew her son would never come back, but I also knew she could move on. She had her life, her memories, and her love for him, and that, in the end, was what mattered most. Diana returned to the city, to her house, where the silence was waiting for her. When opening the door, she felt an unexpected peace settling on her chest. She was no longer looking for answers. It was no longer trying to bring back what had already left. She was accepting life, with all her tragedies, her losses, and above all, her possibilities of restart. She took the phone and called James, her husband, with a slightly trembling but firmer voice. "James, it's time to live again. Both of us." She knew it wouldn't be easy, but the journey of self-discovery and overcoming had just started. Diana had finally left the past behind and was ready for what the future reserved for her. The story of Diana and Max reminds us of the complexities of pain, loss, and search for answers that often challenge us in unimaginable ways. But it also teaches us that, however difficult, there is always a way for healing and overcoming. What would you do if you were in the place of Diana? How would I deal with the impossible? Share your reflections and comment on how Diana's journey touched you. And if you liked this story, be sure to share it with your friends and family. After all, we all need stories that make us reflect on what is really important in life.